A cold wind swept through the crowded streets as the early morning sun struggled to rise over the city skyline. People shuffled past in a hurry, clutching their coats tight against the chill, faces blurred by the fog of routine and worry. Among them, a man named Ray sat behind the wheel of his old, creaky city bus, his eyes scanning the empty seats one last time before pulling away from the depot. The bus was more than just a job to him. It was a lifeline, a small but steady rhythm in a life that hadn't been easy. Every day, Ray drove through neighborhoods where hopes flickered like dim streetlights, where dreams felt just out of reach. But today, something was different. Something felt like it was about to change. The city was waking up, but a silence had settled in the back of the bus. That's when Ray saw him, a small boy, no more than 7 or 8, standing alone by the back door. His clothes were too thin for the morning cold, his eyes wide and searching, lost in the sea of strangers. The boy looked like he didn't know where to go, like he was waiting for someone who wasn't coming. Ray's heart tightened. It was one of those moments where time seems to slow, where the world narrows to one small, fragile life standing right in front of you. Without hesitation, Ray stopped the bus and walked over. "Hey, little man, are you okay?" he asked gently. The boy blinked up at him, voice trembling. I don't know where my dad is," he said softly. Ray felt a familiar ache, a memory of his own childhood when things felt uncertain and scary. He knew he had to help. He wrapped a warm scarf around the boy's neck and handed him a cup of coffee, black, bitter, but comforting. "We'll figure this out," Ray promised. What Ray didn't know was that this lost boy was more than just a child in need of help. Behind those innocent eyes lay a secret that would turn Ray's world upside down. The boy's father was Thomas Wexler, a billionaire whose name alone could move markets and shake the foundations of power. A man used to control, influence, and wealth beyond imagining. Thomas had never been a part of the kind of world Ray lived in, the world of struggle, small kindnesses, and uncertain days. As Ray sat with the boy, comforting him and listening to his quiet story, his phone buzzed with messages he never wanted to see. The news spread fast, and soon his supervisors were calling, angry and demanding. They told Ray that by stopping his route and helping a stranger, he had cost the company money. They said his job was on the line. But Ray didn't regret a single second. Protecting that boy, being the one person who stayed when everyone else looked away, that was worth more than any paycheck. Across the city, Thomas Wexler was unaware of the storm brewing in his own backyard. A powerful man trapped in a gilded cage of expectations, his world was about to collide with Ray's in ways neither of them could imagine. When Thomas finally learned what had happened, when he found out that the man who saved his son was just a bus driver fighting to keep his own life together, something shifted inside him. It wasn't just gratitude, it was recognition. A recognition that sometimes the most valuable people in our lives are those we never expect. But this is just the beginning. What happens next will test their courage, their trust, and their understanding of what family really means. Will Thomas open his world to someone from a place so different from his own? Can Ray navigate a life that suddenly feels bigger than he ever dreamed? And most importantly, how will the boy, caught between two worlds, find his place? The answers lie ahead, tangled in moments of kindness and conflict, strength and vulnerability. This is a story about hope in unexpected places, about the power of human connection, and about how one simple act of kindness can change everything. So stay with us, because the journey has just begun, and what happens next will surprise you. The days that followed were a whirlwind no one could have predicted. Ray's life, once defined by predictable routes and quiet struggles, now felt like it was spinning on a different axis. The bus he drove every morning no longer seemed like just a job. It was a bridge between two worlds, worlds that had never been meant to meet. Thomas Wexler, the billionaire, was a man who had built his life on control, on carefully crafted appearances and towering success. And yet, here he was, reaching across the divide to a man who barely scraped by but had shown a kind of courage money couldn't buy. Back at the bus depot, whispers spread like wildfire. Some co-workers admired Ray, quietly calling him a hero, Others saw only the risk he'd brought upon himself and the company. His bosses weren't shy about their displeasure, issuing warnings and threatening suspension. The message was clear: loyalty to the job came first, no matter the cost. But Ray knew better. The moment he saw that boy, frozen and alone, he felt something stir deep inside, a reminder that sometimes the right thing wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Meanwhile, Thomas wrestled with his own demons. In his towering office filled with glass and steel, surrounded by power and wealth, he felt more trapped than ever. The boy, Noah, wasn't just his son. He was the one thing that grounded him, that softened the sharp edges of his life. Thomas hadn't been there the day Noah got lost. The demands of business, the constant pressure to perform, had pulled him away. Now, seeing how a stranger had stepped in to protect his son, a quiet shame gnawed at him. He wasn't used to asking for help or admitting he needed it. Noah, caught in the middle of this collision of worlds, was a quiet observer. He didn't fully understand the grown-up worries swirling around him, but he knew one thing clearly: Ray had been his safety when everything else felt uncertain. The kindness in that bus driver's eyes was a light in the confusion of a day he wished he could forget. Noah clung to that memory even as the adults around him began to talk about lawyers and meetings, about contracts and money. A new chapter was unfolding for all of them. Thomas, surprisingly, reached out to Ray. The meeting wasn't about money or power. It was about trust. Thomas needed someone he could rely on, someone real. Ray, still wary but driven by the hope of something better for his own daughter, Lena, cautiously accepted the offer to become Thomas's driver. It wasn't just a job, it was a chance for stability, but also a step into a world he'd never known. Yet, beneath the surface, tension simmered. Not everyone in Thomas's world welcomed this change. The boardroom murmurs whispered doubts about the bus driver who now walked the halls of power. Some saw Ray as an outsider, a threat to the polished image Thomas had worked so hard to build. At the same time, Ray faced challenges of his own. His past struggles with debt, the loneliness of single parenthood, and the skepticism of his neighbors weighed heavily. Could he really fit into this new life? And more importantly, would Noah's fragile trust survive the inevitable clash of these two worlds? As the days grew colder, so did the distance between what was comfortable and what was necessary. Thomas found himself confronting questions he had long avoided, about what kind of father he wanted to be, and what it truly meant to protect his family. Ray wrestled with the fear of losing everything he had fought for, even as he tried to hold on to the hope that kindness could build bridges where money and power could not. Then came the night when everything shifted again. Noah disappeared. Just for a moment, a careless second at the edge of a busy street. Panic flooded through Ray and Thomas, igniting a desperate search that tore open old wounds and exposed fears both men had buried deep. The city, vast and indifferent, suddenly felt like a maze designed to separate them forever. But it was in that moment of crisis that the fragile bonds between them were tested and strengthened. Ray, Thomas, and Noah were forced to confront the truths they had been avoiding. The fears, the hopes, and the undeniable fact that sometimes the people who seem least likely to belong are the very ones who hold us together. The question now isn't just who Noah is or what he has to lose, it's how far they're willing to go to protect him. Will Thomas be able to step beyond his world of wealth and control? Can Ray bridge the gap between survival and trust? And what does it mean to be family when everything else feels uncertain? The answers are coming, but not without sacrifice. Stay with us to see how this story unfolds, where kindness meets power, and where one lost boy holds the key to a future neither man could have imagined. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to follow the journey. The next chapter will reveal the choices that change everything.